Yo, what's going on, guys? It is Tom and welcome back to a brand new video in episode number 6 of the Mick Schumacher career mode here for the Legacy Continues, and we're at a very overcast Monaco. Now, first things first, hopefully you guys are having a fantastic Christmas, and I've decided to do this episode one day early on a Saturday instead of a Sunday because I don't feel like uploading on a Sunday is the appropriate day for a video. Now, as you can see, focusing on the video itself and the task in hand, and so far Mick is just trying to settle into the groove here at Monaco. A very tricky track to try and get into the rhythm, and so far he's done a pretty decent job, and he's in practice trying to get a feel for the circuit, and so far so good as he smashes the track acclimatization test and also the tyre wear test. A fairly easy one this track. Obviously Monaco renowned for not having major tyre wear, however it is a little bit higher in the man, I've got to say, compared to other cars, and Mick was actually doing a quite nice job of just about managing as he gets a massive little bit of oversteer on the exit of turn 1 there on his next lap there. But overall, practice was a pretty simple session for Mick Schumacher, and so far he's doing a pretty good job this season, and so far he's kept up his 100% record of getting points in every single race. So the question is, can he keep it up here once again today at Monaco? So it's going to be a real big challenge for the young German. But as you can see, now coming through the final corner in the final part of practice, which is the qualifying test, and he absolutely smashes the purple target, and that is practice in the bag. And we're now going to move into the story of qualifying. So qualifying was underway, and the sun came out for Monaco, and it was a much more beautiful just panoramic and just view compared to Friday, where it was nice and horribly cloudy, which was just not nice in terms of Monaco. You always want to see Monaco in the sun, and that's exactly what we saw in Saturday qualifying. As you can see now, coming through the final corner, Mick's going to get his first lap in Q1, and nothing spectacular there, only getting P9 and just about into the top 10. And once the session would end, Mick would actually scrape through in P14 there. Lance Stroll, an early casualty, trying to get through on the super soft tyre there, so a pretty disappointing one for the young Canadian there. But crucially, Mick does manage to scrape through in P14. As we move to Q2 now, it's time to turn up the engines a little bit, and Mick Schumacher's lap in Q2 is going to be far better than his Q1 lap, as he gets second place across the line there on his one attempt in Q2, which would then become P7, I believe, once the session was finalised, because everybody else improved their lap times. But once again, another Q3 appearance this season for Mick Schumacher here, and especially at Monaco, a track which is a real challenge for the drivers. And we're now going to ride on board for this entire Q3 lap with the young German here. Now going into Sandoval, the first corner, getting a beautiful apex there and a nice bit of traction on the exit as you now power up the hill and prepare yourself for Massenet, which is turn 3, a very tricky, turn 3 or turn 4, depending on how you count it, a very tricky corner which feeds into Casino Square, which is, you've got to really try and hook up this section as you go downhill into Mirabeau, locking up the right front there ever so slightly as we now approach the Lowe's hairpin, the slowest corner on the track, and I believe the slowest corner in Formula 1 at just 50 kilometers an hour, as we now fling it through this right hand, which feeds into Portier, where Senna famously crashed on the left hand side. Now trying to get through the gears and get some power in the back of the engine there to try and power us through the tunnel now, which is a very nice section, absolutely flat out into the Nouvelle chicane, down to second gear, trying to avoid the wall on the inside there, trying to stay as tight as you can onto the curb and on the apex there, and then get some nice traction through to back now. A very tricky corner here. You're going to try and run as close to the wall as you dare as we now approach the swimming pool complex here, trying to get a nice run through this modified section, and Mick does a pretty decent job there so far as we go into Rascasse, looking at the right front and missing the apex ever so slightly as we now go into the final corner. Anthony knows, opening up the DRS now, and what's it going to be? It's been a pretty damn good lap from Mick Schumacher as he comes across the line. It's going to be P3 for the Monaco Grand Prix, and I can tell you Nico Rosberg does have a 10-second grid penalty, a 10-place grid penalty, so he won't be starting from P4 in the race tomorrow. So instead, that's going to promote Mick Schumacher up into 4th place for the race on Sunday. So a pretty decent qualifying session there, only getting beaten by a Mercedes and 2 Ferraris there. Ferrari locking out the front row of the grid, and Red Bull surprisingly not doing very well at a track where you'd expect them to do well. But either way, that was the story of qualifying, and we're now going to move into a very tense Monaco Grand Prix and the race. So it's race day at a beautiful Monaco circuit here. The sun is shining, all the yachts are out, everyone is packed the grandstands, and it's time for one of the most glamorous races on the F1 calendar. And what can Mick Schumacher do from P4 on the grid? Hopefully, fingers crossed, he can try and get a nice result. Obviously, Monaco is renowned for being hard to overtake on, so the better start that Mick Schumacher gets off the line, the better it will be for the race. So fingers crossed, the German can get a good launch off the line and try and get at least past Lewis Hamilton. That'd be pretty nice. At least get himself up into P3 or maybe even a Ferrari if possible. But we're now going to jump onto the grid now, and let's see how the race starts for the Monaco Grand Prix. As you can see, the lights are coming on now and let's see what happens here. We're going to get 5 red lights, a front row for the Monaco Grand Prix, and it's lights out and away we go, and Mick gets a fantastic start off of the line, getting a great launch. Actually, he's actually going to get past Hamilton fairly quickly into turn 1, trying to go around the outside, and both of the Ferraris going at it, hammer and tongs up front. And now Mick gets a great run on Kimi Raikkonen to go side by side, ever so close to the wall into Massenet, and can he make the move? No, he can't. He just has to back out of it there, because Kimi Raikkonen way too committed to the move there, and Mick was always behind in terms of his car position there. Now maybe into Mirabo, can he possibly try and line up a move here on the Iceman? No, he can't, not quite. And Kimi Raikkonen holding on quite nicely into P2 so far, and Vettel setting the pace early on up front, but moving midway or slightly towards the end of lap 2 now. And both of the Ferraris still up ahead here, and Vettel's actually holding up a little bit of a train. And now looking on the exit of Raskas, Mick gets a really nice exit, it's a nice bit of traction, and gets past Kimi Raikkonen there quite nicely through the final corner, or the penultimate corner should I say, and gets himself up into P2. And now he's in the back of Sebastian Vettel, who I've got to say, Vettel must have some sort of problem, because if you look at the mini up on the train he's starting to create, he's not got some good pace here up front of Vettel, and he seems to be struggling, and he's holding up a lot of cars. It's now into turn 1, surely not. Mick Schumacher's going to go around the outside, he's going to try and swing back on the other German, his fellow German, now going side by side up the hill into Massenet. Vettel's going to squeeze him to the wall, it's ever so close, and Mick just has to back out of it. And now Lewis Hamilton's trying to have a sniff up the inside of turn 4 here, but he's going to have to try and go around the outside, and there's no room through there, as Mick makes good defensive work there on the 3 times world champion, and he's got to settle for P2 for the time being, just behind Sebastian Vettel as we move to the end of that particular lap, onto the start of lap 5. DRS once open once again now, as we come across the start finish line to start lap 5 into turn 1. Can Mick Schumacher go around the outside this time? It's going to be tricky. He's going to go for it though, picks up the traction on the exit, and he is going to pull it off, and it's a fantastic move into the lead of the race. And what a fantastic manoeuvre that is from the German there, to get himself into the lead of the Monaco Grand Prix in a manor car, which is absolutely fantastic to see. But moving on to the start of lap number 9, as you can see, Sebastian Vettel nowhere to be seen, holding up plenty of cars behind, which is allowing Mick Schumacher to extend his gap. However, eventually Vettel came in for an early stop, as he had a problem with his car, and this basically unleashed Hamilton, who was starting to set some really good lap times, and eventually caught up to the back of Mick Schumacher. As you can see now, he's now within a second as we come across the line on lap 14, and now Mick, under pressure, is going to make a slight mistake, locking up ever so slightly the front tyres, which just makes him miss the apex and go straight into the wall and lose his left front end plate, and also allow Lewis Hamilton back through into the lead of the race there. So moving on to the end of lap 15, and now Mick and also Lewis Hamilton actually coming in for their first stops of the race, and I believe they're only stops, as they're probably going to switch over to the super soft tyre. So it's going to be interesting one here, because Mick is going to require a front wing change, whereas Lewis Hamilton's actually been held up by a couple of cars, but it's going to be fairly close. However, I think the front wing change is going to be a bit slow, and yes it is, the manor guys is not particularly quick, and the mechanics aren't the fastest. And look at these positions that Mick's losing. He's lost a position to Verstappen as well, and also Kvyat in the Jaguar. So a really poor pit stop there, 11.7, nothing good whatsoever from the manor crew there, and that's a lot of work that Mick Schumacher's now got to try and make up on the AI cars on a track where you can't particularly overtake. So Mick's got his work out for the remainder of this Grand Prix. And as we move on to the end of that particular lap now, Mick is on the back of Danny Kvyat in the Jaguar. He's doing a great job this race so far, but now with DRS wide open, Mick's going to pull to the inside, match him on the brakes, and go up the inside of the first corner and make the move stick and get past the young Russians, who move on to the start of lap number 18. And Mick Schumacher setting a great purple sector left, or sorry, purple lap should I say, and he actually set a succession of purple laps, really putting the hammer down in the manor car on those fresh tyres and putting them to good use. And as you can see, eventually he caught up to Max Verstappen there, setting one final purple lap time there to really drive the point home that he's got some good pace here at Monaco. And as you can see, looking at his train of cars now through the swimming pool section on lap 21, there's contact, and I believe there's the Sauber or Felipe Nasr tangled in there somewhere, who's actually causing all sorts of palaver. And as we go into Raskas now, Mick's going to find a little space here, go around the outside of 3 cars and overtake Verstappen, Raikkonen, and also Bottas, and he gets himself up into P4, and he's now going to follow Lewis Hamilton through some DRS assistance past Felipe Nasr, the lap car, and he's actually going to stay right on the back of the British driver and basically make up all of the time that he lost in the front wing change at the pit stop. However, Lewis Hamilton's pace was absolutely incredible. Eventually Ricciardo pit from the lead of the race, which promoted Mick Schumacher into second place, but that is exactly how the race would end. And unfortunately, Lewis Hamilton's pace was just a bit too much, and Mick couldn't do anything. At the end of the day, that is a Mercedes, Mick is in a manor, so there's only so much Mick Schumacher could do. But P2 in the Monaco Grand Prix, a fantastic result for the German there. And overall, not a lot of action this race. It's a fairly quiet one. There's a few bits here and there, but overall, a fairly just quiet and the standard Monaco race that you would expect. There are not loads of action due to the track, but overall Lewis Hamilton there taking a well-deserved 25 points and second place for Mick Schumacher. So overall, I think 18 points. I think Mick will be pretty pleased with that. And as you can see, Lewis Hamilton raises the trophy there as the race winner of the 2016 Monaco Grand Prix. So a pretty solid race, and like I said, 18 points for Mick Schumacher for the championship, which should do pretty nice for him. And I believe the championship right now is going to be very, very close between everybody. But first of all, before we look at the race results, we're just going to quickly look at the upgrades that Mick is going to purchase for the next race in Austria, I believe, or Canada. And as you can see, he actually gets a chassis weight and also a downforce upgrade. So the car's going to be fairly quick in the next race in Austria. But we're now going to look at the final race results. And as you can see, obviously we know that Lewis Hamilton won the race and Mick was second. Also Bottas getting a brilliant third place ahead of Kimi Raikkonen, and also Sebastian Vettel dropping out of the top 12. So a very disappointing race for him, considering he started from pole position. And also Danny Kvyat way up there in P6, and both Jaguars in the points. So a couple of good results there for those guys, and Daniel Ricciardo there way down in P8. But crucially, looking at the Drivers' Championship now, we're still in P5. Mick doing a solid job there, but look at the gap, 12 points covering the top 5. Incredible stuff so far, and a very, very tight top end of the table. But I'm not expecting Mick to stay there in this car, but so far he's still doing the job. But I'm dreading tracks like Baku, where the Manor will probably fall away a little bit. But as you can see, looking at the constructor standings finally, the Manor's still in a solid 5th place there, and Williams can't seem to catch the blue and black lethal weapons. So overall, a pretty decent race actually, and some pretty positive constructors and also driver standing results there for basically the Manor team and also Mick Schumacher. But overall, if you guys did enjoy the video, then a thumbs up would be greatly appreciated. And also, if you're new around here, if you can subscribe to my channel, that'd be absolutely fantastic. And overall, guys, that's about it for this video. And if you did enjoy it, then thanks a lot for watching. Have a great Christmas. If you did miss any of the previous episodes, then I do urge you to go check the playlist down below in the description. But other than that, guys, check out these videos on screen, and I'll see you in my next video very soon. Goodbye.